She walked into my home with a white smile and soft hands. But something about her eyes told me she didn't come in peace. That was the first moment I felt the cold coil of intuition twist in my stomach. Back then, I didn't have a single reason to feel that way. No proof, no history, nothing but the kind of uneasy knowing a mother doesn't ignore for long. But I told myself to hush. I told myself I was being paranoid. Because that woman, that girl, really, standing in the doorway, holding my son's hand, she was supposed to be family. She was supposed to be the one. At least that's what my son, Malik, said. Now let me take you back to before I knew her name, to before I let her sleep under my roof, before she lit a match and smiled while watching my family burn. Life. It was quiet before she came around. I lived in a modest 3-bedroom house on the east side of Charlotte. It was mine, paid off in full the day I turned 60, a gift I gave myself after a life of budgeting, raising 2 boys, and washing other folks' floors before I could afford to build my own. I used to wake up each morning to the smell of peppermint oil on my wrists and gospel humming through my speakers. I had my routines: coffee before talking, news after prayer, call my sister even every Thursday. I didn't bother nobody and didn't have much mess in my life after my husband passed. Malik was my youngest, my sensitive one, the one who'd cry right along with you if you stubbed your toe. Grew up loving books and jazz, quiet as a whisper, but thoughtful like an old soul. He worked in tech now, IT help desk. Not flashy, but steady. Lived about 2 hours away, but called me every Sunday, like clockwork. Hey mama, you eat today? That was always how he started the call. Like I was the one he was raising, instead of the other way around. His older brother, Keith, had always been a little rougher around the edges. They didn't talk as much. Not since Keith borrowed my car one Christmas and brought it back smelling like weed and regret. But Malik, that was my baby, my piece. So when he called 3 months ago and said, "Mama, I want you to meet someone," I smiled. Genuinely. I thought maybe, just maybe, Joy was finally walking through my door again. She came on a Wednesday. Mid-afternoon, early summer, the sunlight stretched long across the living room rug, and I'd just pulled a peach cobbler out of the oven. She wore a cream-colored dress that hugged her waist, and a pair of gold hoop earrings that swung when she laughed. Her hair was slicked into a tidy bun, and her nails were the kind of expensive that didn't chip. Mrs. Holloway. "It's so good to meet you," she said, reaching out to hug me like we were old friends. Her voice was gentle, almost too sweet, like syrup that hadn't started to sour yet. "Call me Bernice," I said politely, drying my hands on a towel, but not returning the hug. Everything about her seemed picture perfect. Too perfect, like she'd studied a role and rehearsed it for months. Not that I was looking for cracks. Not then. Malik watched her the whole time, like she'd hung the moon. Couldn't keep his eyes off her. When I served up the cobbler, still steaming, soft crust, splitting where the peaches bubbled to the top, she moaned like it was the finest dessert she'd ever had. "You made this from scratch?" she asked, licking her spoon like a child. "I did," I said, smiling. "And I washed the peaches myself too. Ran out of canned ones." "Lord," she giggled, patting her flat stomach. "You gonna make me fat?" Malik laughed too hard at that. I just nodded. That night, after dinner and dishes, Malik pulled me aside while she was testing Wi-Fi on her phone. "Mama," he said, his hands clasped tight in front of him like a schoolboy. "Her name's Chanel. I'm gonna ask her to marry me." I froze. Just for a breath. "Already?" I asked cautiously. "How long y'all been seeing each other?" "Almost 9 months," he said. and it's been the best 9 months of my life. I wanted you to meet her first. I nodded, even though something in me wilted a little. I appreciate that, I said. She's lovely, and that was the truth, at least on the outside. But there was something I couldn't name, like a tickle behind the ears. The way she kept glancing at her phone when she thought no one was looking. The way she didn't ask me a single thing about me. Not where I was from, not what I liked, not even how to clean the cast iron skillet when she offered to help with dishes. People like that. People who don't ask questions. They're often hiding something. Still, I kept it to myself. Let my son enjoy his joy. Kept smiling, even when nothing about her smile reached her eyes. It wasn't until maybe 3 weeks later that the second pebble dropped. And baby, when pebbles fall, they tend to echo. I was at the corner store picking up some sugar and dish detergent. Bless those little shops that still sell everything for $1. En route to the cashier, I heard 2 women talking near the magazine rack. She lucky, one of them hissed. Back in the day, we'd have run her clean out of here. Girl, I told Pastor not to press charges, the other said. But you know how he is, always trying to extend grace. I wasn't paying them no mind until I heard the name fall from their mouths like a hot coal. Chanel. Bold little thing. I stiffened. I didn't turn around right away. Just shifted my basket in my hands. She said she was trying to help him keep private business private. The taller one said, but blackmail ain't help, honey. It's a crime. My heart thudded. Blood in my ears. Blackmail? Chanel? No, I said to myself. Couldn't be the same one. Chanel isn't that uncommon. And what would Malik be doing with someone tied up in something like that? Still, I took my receipt with shaking hands, tucked it into my purse like a prayer. Because one thing about intuition, it don't need hard proof to start whispering louder. That night, I didn't sleep easy, not because of anything she'd said or done, but because I'd heard something I wasn't meant to, and now I couldn't unhear it. Still, I said nothing, not yet. I needed facts, not gossip. But that was the night I realized something wasn't adding up, and I'd be damned if I let silence ruin my son. After that night, I started watching Chanel, not in any loud or obvious way. I wasn't about to be the meddling, overbearing mama folks love to complain about. No, I was quiet about it, subtle. I just started noticing things, like how every time she left a room, her phone went with her, attached to her like a second limb, even when she went to the bathroom. Now call me old-fashioned, but baby, ain't nobody need to carry a phone into a powder room unless you hide in something or somebody. And then there was the way she talked to Malik. Sugary sweet when he was looking, cold and clipped if he stepped out. One day while she was at my place, waiting for him to pick something up from the store, I offered her a sandwich, and she barely looked up from her phone. No thanks, she mumbled, still scrolling. I don't eat bread. But when Malik returned 10 minutes later with bagels and cream cheese, she lit up like it was Christmas morning and said, my favorite. I just tucked that into my mental folder. A small note, but in my experience, it's the crumbs that lead you to the whole mess. Still, doubting her made me feel like I was doubting Malik, and that part tore me up inside. You raise your children with love, prayer, and sweat. You carry them in your body, feed them from your hands, and hope, Lord, you hope, that they'll know when someone's lying to them. But love can be blind, and it can make good people dumb. The breaking point came nearly 2 weeks later. I was at the community center, helping package hygiene kits for the women's shelter. It was something I did on Mondays. My little way of giving back. I was placing toothbrushes into plastic bags when Pastor Elijah's wife, Sister June, walked over and tapped my shoulder. "Bernice," she said with that bubbly voice of hers. "How's that beautiful son of yours?" I smiled. "He's good. Keeps to himself mostly. Still working long hours in tech. Oh, and I heard," she lowered her voice, "he's kinda sorta engaged?" I chuckled. "Seems like it." She leaned in, voice barely a whisper now. "To a young woman named Chanel, is that right?" I froze. Just for a split second, just enough for her to catch it. "Why?" I asked. Calm, careful, like I was asking what time it was, not whether or not my son might be tangled up with a con artist. Her face changed, just a flicker. Then she smiled too big, like folks do, when they realize they've stepped a toe into deep water. "Oh, I'm sure it's not my place to say," she said, backing up already. "You know, young folks got their own lives and all." "June," I said softly. "Honey, if you know something, I think a mother has the right to know too." She hesitated. Then she sighed. "Bernice, do you remember that situation with Brother Harm?" I nodded slowly. Everyone knew about that. Harmon was one of the oldest members of our church. Sat in the same worn pew, third row, every Sunday. Kind man. Widower. Used to donate quietly to the women's shelter every other month. About a year back, word got out he'd almost lost his house because of a private loan agreement gone wrong. Fast forward a few weeks later, the whispers started. Something about a younger woman threatening to release inappropriate pictures. Someone said she used playful texts, then flipped on him when he tried to break things off. Others said she tricked him into signing a bad contract. It was all hush-hush. No charges. No names mentioned outside of closed doors. But we all figured it out eventually. "Don't tell me," I whispered. June nodded, cutting me off. "Yes, that's Chanel. Pastor convinced him to let it be handled quietly. No legal mess. But yes, that's her." My chest felt like it had been banded in iron. Tight. Barely able to breathe. "And you're sure?" I asked, half praying she'd say she wasn't. She sucked in a breath, gave me a sad look. "Bernice, I helped serve food at the church dinner last month. That girl walked in with your Malik, and I nearly dropped the cornbread tray. That night, I pulled out an old shoebox of mail and receipts and found the church newsletter from last year. The one with the tiny paragraph on Brother Harmon requesting prayers for personal health and legal issues." I remembered how vague it was, stared at that line. Then I stared at my phone. I knew I couldn't ask Malikim directly. He wouldn't believe me. He was headfirst in love. Chanel could probably set the house on fire, and he'd hand her the gasoline. So instead, I called Sister Loretta. She ran the women's committee and had more church gossip than the internet. Normally, I wasn't one to indulge, but desperate moments make desperate women bold. By the time we hung up, an hour later, I had more truth than I ever wanted. 3 separate women had mentioned Chanel's name in whisper close calls over the last year. She dated a deacon's nephew, an older gentleman from the VFW, and one of the security guards from the courthouse. Each time, it ended with rumors of quiet threats and fast disappearances. No one ever formally accused her. That's how slick she operated. But she had a pattern. She moved from man to man, always charming, always mysterious, and always getting something out of it. Money, gifts, housing, loans with no payback. And now she'd found Malik, sweet, trusting Malik, and brought her game into my house. That night, I sat in my bed, the lights out, The ceiling fan, spinning slow overhead. My hands were still, my heart, not so much, because now I wasn't just suspicious. I knew, and knowing meant I had to choose. Protect my child's peace, or speak the truth loud enough to break it. I sat with the truth for a few days, didn't move on it right away. I let it steep like strong tea, bitter and dark. You rush these things, and you risk pushing your child further into the very arms you're trying to pull them from. So I waited, watched. Then I got my opportunity. Malik called that Saturday morning and asked if they could stop by for Sunday dinner. He had something important to talk about. Oh, I said, trying to keep my voice even. Yeah. He chuckled nervously. You'll see. That was all he gave me. I knew what it was. This boy was about to propose, or had already done it, and now they were going to come, grinning ear to ear, expecting me to clap and offer cobbler. Part of me wanted to scream, another part wanted to cry, but mostly I felt a firelight under my ribs. They were coming into my house, and so I'd be ready. Sunday came with a hot wind, whipping through the trees. I cooked, like I always did on Sundays. Collards simmering with smoked turkey wing, cornbread in the skillet, sweet potatoes roasted until they blistered, and my famous macaroni bubbling golden at the top. If I was going to confront the devil, I was going to do it with a clean apron on. They arrived just before 3. Malik came in first, holding a bouquet of flowers, red and white. Mama, he grinned, kissing my cheek. Chanel picked these for you. She followed in behind him in a lavender blouse, diamond studs flashing in her ears, and a purse that looked like a month's rent at least. I hope you like lilies, she said as she handed me the bouquet. I took them gently. Lilies are lovely. We ate. Small talk floated across the table. Usually I love to hear my son talk. His voice always carried warmth. But that afternoon, his joy echoed like a ticking clock. When the plates were cleared and wine had softened the edges, he stood up and reached into his pocket. And I knew. I didn't want to say anything before. Malik began. But I proposed last weekend, and she said yes. He beamed. She's gonna be my wife. He took her hand, and I swear I saw her eyes flick toward me, just a little too long, like she was waiting for a reaction. Like she knew. I smiled, just enough. Slow and calm. Well, I said, that is news. Chanel raised the glass of sparkling juice, said she didn't drink, claimed it was bad for her skin, and clinked my wine glass gently. To new beginnings, she said. Funny how lies always taste sweet at first sip. When dessert came, I finally said it. Chanel, your name's so unique. You know, I heard it recently at the center. She blinked. Oh, I said, slicing her a piece of pound cake. The women's shelter. We were packing kits on Monday. She smiled. Polite, unreadable. Malik poured more water into his glass, still half tuned out. Someone mentioned your name, I continued. Said you were connected to an incident last year, something with Deacon Harmon, and there it was, that heartbeat pause. Minimal, but too precise to be innocent. She recovered fast. Too fast. Oh, that situation, she said, laughing lightly. Honestly, that was so blown out of proportion. That man was lonely and confused. It was a misunderstanding. Malik looked up then. His brows pinched together. What misunderstanding? He asked, laughing nervously. Oh, babe, she said quickly, wrapping her hand around his arm. I didn't want to bring that negativity into what we have. But yeah, there was an older man I used to visit through a senior companion program. He started getting inappropriate, sending gifts, texting me at all hours. When I pulled back, he got upset and tried to smear my name. She turned to me with doe eyes. I thought you'd understand, Mrs. Holloway. Men like to twist things, especially older ones. Malik looked between us now, uncertain. And I sat back watching her. You sure that's all it was? I asked, keeping my tone calm. I wouldn't lie about something like that, she said. I replied. Of course. A silence settled. Then I stood, picking up the cake plate. Well, I continued softly, I hope the other families you visited, through the companion program, don't resurface with similar misunderstandings. That would be so unfortunate. Her face went still, just a flicker. But Malik missed it. He always missed the flickers other people made. Not me. I saw everything. That night, after they left, he called me. I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. Mama, he said, is there something you're not saying? I paused. Then I told him the truth. Quietly. Just the facts. About the people in the community. About the whispers. About the patterns. I told him I'd spoken to Sister Loretta and Sister June. I told him I hadn't judged. Just listened. I'm not telling you what to do, I said, voice steady. I just want you to look. Open your eyes. Look deeper. He didn't say much. Just thanked me and hung up. I knew I'd planted the seed. And when the soil is that soft, truth blooms fast. I didn't hear from Malik for almost a full week after that. No Sunday phone call. No texts. Nothing. I tried to tell myself not to worry. Tried to keep busy. Crocheting on the porch. Sorting through old church bulletins. Even rearranging my spice shelf for the 5th time. But through every hum of the ceiling fan and every creak of the wood floor under my slippers, my mind went straight back to him. What was he thinking about? What was she saying to him? That kind of silence from my son scared me more than shouting ever could, because when Malik got quiet, he was one of two things, either heartbroken or conflicted, and a conflicted man in love. Chanel had him right where she wanted. Then finally, late one Thursday night, the phone rang. Hey, Mama. His voice was low, tired, heavy with something that hadn't been there before. I pressed the phone close to my ear and sat down at the kitchen table. I got your message, he said, and a long silence followed. I don't know what to think, he admitted. I talked to her about it. She said y'all are just judging her. Said people make up things when a woman's confident and doesn't play small. Nobody's judging her confidence, baby, I said quietly. It's the content of her character that got folks whispering. He sighed. She told me that man tried to touch her. Deacon Harmon said she tried to warn everyone, but no one believed her. I paused. And maybe that's true, I said. But that wouldn't explain the other whispers about the old VFW man, the court officer, that deacon's nephew from last fall. He didn't say anything. She has a pattern, Malik. I continued gently. She gets close, makes people let their guard down, and then something always goes missing. Trust, money, peace, whatever's easiest. Still, he was quiet. Then he broke. She asked me to take her name off the rental agreement and add her to my savings account instead. His voice cracked. Said it was just in case something happened while we planned for the wedding. Said she wanted to protect me. I could barely speak. There it was, clear as day. She said she wanted to protect you. I asked, yeah, but I thought maybe she was just trying to be responsible. No, baby, I said slowly. She was trying to own you. That's when he started crying. Not full sobs. Just quiet gasps. The kind men try and swallow because they think it makes them less of one. I feel like a fool. I sat with that pain. You never want to hear your child cry. But sometimes, it's the breaking open that lets light finally reach them. You're not a fool, I whispered. You were in love, and not the first to fall for a pretty story. But now that your eyes are open, you get to choose. Not out of fear, but clarity. That call stretched past midnight. By the end of it, I could tell something shifted in him. He didn't say what he'd do next. He just said, I need to think, and sometimes. That's enough. The next day, a storm rolled in, literally and otherwise. Thunder cracked before the sky even turned dark that afternoon. By evening,